Cheers to adulting.
Hi, everybody.
I'm Ashley Barajas.
And I'm Abby Rosemarin.
And this is
Cheers to Adulting.
Oh. And with us, we have Erin. Say hi, Erin. Do you want to share your last name, or do you just want
sure. Erin Sandler. Yes.
Erin Sandler. So this episode, we are drinking a suggested cocktail by our lovely Courtney.
Mm-hmm.
So it's called Black Widow. It is muddled. It's a little bit extra for like a cocktail effort that I went through to do it.
But you know what? It's 2020. Let's be fucking extra.
Yeah. So it's muddled, blackberries, honey, lemon juice, a couple dashes of bitters, tequila, and minced rosemary,
Some
and then
smoked rosemary.
Yeah, and then topped off with some mineral water. It's supposed to be Topo Chico, but I didn't go to the right store for Topo Chico.
Yeah.
Whatever. Tastes good. It's a sipping drink.
Exactly.
Except the second one tastes more like I could drink this in 2 seconds, and I'm going to try not to.
We're going to turn this into a sipping drink because we do not want to be hot fucking messes, at least not more than we already are.
Yeah. Great. So we're going to start off by talking about adulting or non-adulting that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
So I will start by a kind of, I would say, adulting and non-adulting in one. So I picked up a second job because I'm a masochist.
You're a hustler.
Yeah.
That's what you mean. You hustling.
Working in
Get that dough.
Yeah, exactly. What? Get that money.
Money.
So in the evenings, I am now like 3 nights a week. I go to this house and I basically cook, clean, and help with the kids. And I love it, but I get home late because now I'm also trying to get fit, which that is going pretty well.
Yeah.
But I don't get home until, so like on my way home is a Planet Fitness. I work out with my mask on. And so I don't get home till like after 9 o'clock. So a lot of laundry, a lot of cleaning, not getting done. Yesterday, I woke up and decided I did not want to go to work. And I have vacation time that I need to use. So I was like, you know what? I'll sleep in. I'll get some like cleaning, some laundry done. I went back to sleep. And then when I eventually woke back up, I just basically stayed on my phone on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and just kept scrolling through and didn't get out of bed until like 1:45. Mostly because my cat was in between my legs and it was like so cozy.
Oh.
And I did feel really lazy, but I just needed that day to just like do nothing because I'm always doing something. And I did eventually cleaned my kitchen, like really deep cleaned it. So that felt pretty good. And then I did work in the evening, but sometimes you just need to like, I always feel like if I have a day off, like I have to be cleaning, I have to be doing all this stuff. But it was just like a nice little like mental break, especially with dealing with the election and everything. That's just, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I will say that is an overall win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I will dive in now with my, it's, you know what, I'm going to say that I'm in the same boat where it feels like a fail. It's going to feel like a fail, but there's a turnaround. It's a little comeback kid story.
Turn around,
bright eyes.
Sorry.
So I'm going to have to vague book it a little bit, and I'm sorry. As brash and as open as I can be about a lot of things, there's also a lot of stuff that I don't really share, at least not with the podcasting public. You know what? And I'm only 1.5 drinks in, motherfucker. But my personal life's been kind of a dumpster fire, and things took a unexpected turn at the beginning of this week, and it fucking rocked my world. I can't even pretend. I'm not even being hyperbolic when I say that. It really hit harder than I was expecting, and the hit just kind of kept coming. Like, it's kind of like when you eat a spicy food and you're like, okay, yeah, that was spicy, but I think I'm gonna be fine. And then the heat just keeps building. You're like, okay, this is unpleasant. Maybe it's time to deal with it. And it just keeps going. And you're like, mother of God, put some butter on my tongue. This sucks.
And then you feel it the next morning.
and then your butthole hurts. So yeah, that just kind of knocked me on my ass, and I didn't do much of anything Sunday night, didn't do much of anything Monday, even into Tuesday, where I was kind of like, okay, I'm sick of this shit, like I want to get back into my life again. I was operating at like 50% capacity, and it really was, I just needed to take that time and lean into the feelings and
lean into it.
lean in, which actually it's, we'll be diving into that later on to the podcast, but staying present right now. And then basically yesterday and today I went balls to the wall, cleaned up my kitchen, got my laundry done, got work stuff done that I had invoices that I should have sent out on Monday or Tuesday, and I'm like, I can't look at a spreadsheet right now, this is not going to happen. So likewise, sometimes you just kind of have to just shut off a little bit, go away from your routine, and then come back.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. So Erin, if we would love to hear if you have any adulting or non-adulting, because as you can see, we are hot messes. We don't get A's in the adulting departments.
I thought it was pretty impressive. I mean, this is a difficult week, and I think adulting is really hard to do all of the adulting that is expected as part of adulting. But
yeah,
I'm sure you're familiar since you go over your adulting every week. So I was just trying to jog my memory. It's since the pandemic started, it's hard to remember things, but things I've done this week. I mean, I worked, and then I've had a lot of Zoom meetings. So I had like a committee meeting and a board meeting. I feel like that's some serious adulting to go to those things. Yeah. Today I cleaned my stovetop. I felt like that was
I feel like
adulting.
That's a pretty big one. That's a big ask.
Yeah. Lately I've been getting more in the habit of doing that every time before I cook. I can't do it after I cook because it's too hot.
Yeah.
But I'll do it before I cook every time, so that I'm not I used to wait a month and then I'd be breaking my elbow cleaning my stove. So I feel like that's been pretty good. So overall, I cooked dinner tonight. That was
what'd you make?
It was really good. It was a pumpkin curry.
Ooh, pumpkin curry.
Yeah, with crispy tofu.
We had a vegan.
Yeah, we had a nice
tonight.
vegan meal.
We had purple carrot. We did some improvising. Fizzle's making her usual debut.
Hey girl, hey.
It was it was supposed to be tamarind cauliflower sort of dish, but the cauliflower went bad because I waited too long to cook it. But I had some broccoli. And it was just one thing after the other. They were supposed to send pre-cooked rice. They sent a pre-cooked something else, but it wasn't pre-cooked. So it turned out okay.
Yeah, all's well that ends well. It was a delicious broccoli dish. We ate all of it, and yeah.
Made it too spicy per usual. But that's fine.
Our butthole's gonna hurt.
Yeah, they're gonna hurt tomorrow. I'm gonna feel that.
All right.
It's okay. So we're gonna get into the thick of it. So feel free to interrupt us, chime, or whatever. We usually, from episode to episode, we try and do research on certain things to running out of time.
Now we don't have to
remove the 40-minute time limit. Nice.
Yo, we appreciate it. Now we don't have to do the
Thank
callback.
you,
Thank you, Zoom. Anyways.
Yeah. So because you are the professional, we figured we'd let the professional talk the professional stuff.
Yeah. We're really just going to be here to put our layman 2 cents in and our personal experiences, but that's really going to be it. So that also includes if we're saying something and you're like, no, actually, in my professional opinion, that is dead wrong. Interrupt us. That's you. At the end of the day, we didn't go to school for any of this stuff. We are kind of shooting from the hip.
Also, would you like to specify specifically what you do?
Sure. So I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, licensed in New Hampshire. So currently I work with children, but I've also worked with adults as well. So, which is important since this is about adulting. But even though I work with kids, I work with families too. So I work with a lot of adults anyway. And with a whole variety of different presenting problems, because I work in a community mental health center. So we kind of see the gamut of kind of everything that's out there and that people bring in. So that's kind of a synopsis.
And we also, this is a comedy podcast, but an educational one at that. So we will make jokes and make light of the situation. And
Yeah. And I've noticed that some of our podcasts that should have been the hardest hitting and like serious ended up having to be the funniest. And
very true.
I think it's just because our gallows humor might just really be on point.
True.
But
like, I might cry this episode. It very well may happen, but
We'll
we
see.
also may laugh a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I am no stranger to crying in an online audience where upwards of thousands of people could be seeing me do that shit. So yeah, I'm game. Let's do this.
Well, I think we didn't specifically say what we were going to be talking about. So this episode is about grief. Whether it's grief from losing a loved one, maybe not even a loved one, losing someone in your life that has passed away.
Some type of figure.
Yeah, or grieving the loss of a relationship, getting over a breakup, or it could be loss of a job. I guess that one would be easy for you to kind of relate to.
Yeah, because
Thanks, Corona.
Thanks, Corona.
Yeah, love that for us. So first we'll just talk about some personal experiences.
Yeah.
With it. Damn, I already feel heavy. I just like feel like my heart just like went. Ugh.
I'm like so excited about this because I just feel like it's been a really grief-filled time. And then I'll just say too, like personally, there's like every year around this time something has happened that's been like a grief loss kind of thing. So I'm just like so ready to go there.
Yeah. So for example, so Dia de los Muertos happened November 1st. So on Halloween, Abby and Courtney came over, and before they came over, I set up my ofrenda. So for people who don't know, an ofrenda is a Mexican tradition, not necessarily like for Catholics, but it's has indigenous foundings. So you set up basically an altar for loved ones that have passed away, and you leave little offerings. You have their pictures there. You leave like a sweetbread, or I left little like a tequila nip and a whiskey nip for relatives, and some homemade lengua and some guacamole. And it like Abby came over, and like as I was setting it, I like started to cry, and then Abby showed up, and I like could not talk to her because I could not talk to her without like breaking down. And I don't think Abby's ever seen me like that.
I don't.
You've seen me cry plenty of times.
Oh yeah.
But not like inconsolable. Like usually I lean into my feelings, but it was just like very emotional for me this year, just feeling the loss of
Hey.
So because of COVID, we haven't been able to see our families. And for me, not just because of COVID, I haven't been able to financially afford to fly all the way to Texas to see my family. And for the past 4 years at my job, I haven't been able to go home for Christmas or Thanksgiving or anywhere for Thanksgiving or Christmas locally because I have to work. Even though when they first hired me, they said that we would switch off holidays. And that was not the case. So although I will say, because finally I advocated for myself this year, I will have Thanksgiving off. But I have to take the risk to go to Jersey because I'm not going to take the bigger risk of flying and going to Texas. But I still have not seen my family in over 2 years. So anyway, setting up the ofrenda, I digress. I just realized how distant I felt from my family. And just feeling all that grief of like missing my dad and just heavy fucking shit, man.
Yeah. I mean, heavy times, heavy topic, and I guess I can jump in as well because I mean, the most recent bit of grief for me when it comes to people dying, and I actually added my own picture to the ofrenda, was I don't even like saying grandmother-in-law because people think, oh, your in-laws. No, this woman was my grandmother for the last 14 years. She adopted me in as her own. I'm not shy about saying that me and my biological family, we have a very estranged relationship. I was adopted into my in-laws. Losing her was a punch to the gut. And even though I knew it was her time, like, this woman was the matriarch of my adopted family, and just one of those strong female role models, and losing her was just really, really tough. The funeral was excruciating, mostly because I was seeing my grandfather-in-law grieve, and to watch this man who had such a light in his eye, like he's always joking and making these one-liners, and to just see him so crestfallen, it's like, but yeah, me and grief, we're good buddies at this point, because I'm also somebody who lost her father. I lost her about him 5+ years ago, and that was a very complicated grief, which I'm sure we'll touch on it in some way, that we had a very estranged relationship again. And so his death I was grieving the life he could have lived more than the life he actually had. And then we mentioned that I know what it's like the grief of a job. I was a freelance yoga instructor for the last 6.5 years. I worked to build up my client list to be full time, and my career was at an all-time high, and I actually was going to be adding on even more classes, and it was to the point that I was like, oh, can I handle this class load, because I'm really, like, I am to the brim now. And then COVID happened, and I watched my client list disappear on me. And even to this day, I have one client that's returned. I'm running yoga therapy groups at an inpatient and outpatient center, which ironically right now, that's probably one of the safest places to be, is in a hospital and an inpatient center. But everything else is gone. Most of my corporate clients have been like, hey, yeah, budgets have been slashed for 2020 and 2021. I don't expect them to ever really come back. And I find myself really going, okay, what's next? And I had to grieve. I had to grieve losing a career that I built up and had so much passion in, to the point that I realized I disassociated a little bit from my own career. And I didn't realize how badly I disassociated until I started teaching again. It was like, oh, wow, I missed this. And then all of a sudden all the feelings came forward. Like, I've missed it the entire time. It's just I numbed myself because I couldn't handle those feelings. Because grief is challenging. It's grief's a motherfucker.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll talk about it a little bit later. And then I had my late boyfriend who I dated before Michael, who had passed away. And I think if I hadn't finally learned how to grieve and to go through that process, which I learned way too late for my father, I had better coping mechanisms when I lost my late boyfriend. And so do you have any personal that you want to share, or?
Sure. I feel like I got acquainted with grief at a pretty young age. When I was a kid, we just had a lot of extended family members die. Mm-hmm. Most of them I wasn't super close with, but my parents were. So I think like the first funeral I went to was when I was 6 years old or something.
Wow.
But I've been to a lot of them, and I'm actually really grateful for it. I'm Jewish, which Ashley knows.
I was going to say, I would feel like, which I do have listed in the outline for us to discuss about sitting Shiva. And I feel like being Jewish and how Jewish people deal with death is a healthy way, as well as like people who celebrate Dia de los Muertos and set up ofrendas have a healthy view and approach to death.
Yeah, I feel like it helped me a lot. And I think I kind of took it for granted until I got older. I grew up in an interfaith family too. So I also went to funerals that were Christian. And it was really different. that was kind of interesting too, because I sort of had this way that I knew how to grieve, but then going to another kind of sort of cultural grieving ritual, it was like really different, and I had to kind of figure out what are all the things that you do, and sort of the mood could be really different, and depending what kind of Christian funeral it was too, it was different from one to another, like Episcopal or Catholic or other ones that I went to. So yeah. And then I guess there's been a lot of loss, and I like that you talked about a lot of different kinds of loss too, because I think that's really important to have in mind, that there's so many different kinds of loss. I think another one, like loss of a pet.
Yeah,
that one's
not, I don't want to think about that.
Yeah. That was one of the worst ones. Yes.
Oh
Yeah. Or even just like things not turning out how you thought they would. I mean, this year, like.
Oh yeah. Especially for like there were some memes going around, but it was so true that it's like during COVID, it was like, if you have an extrovert friend, check on them. They really need
They are not okay.
They're not okay.
Yeah.
It's so true. Like, at first, like, I will say it was good and not great. The fact that when everyone was stuck at home and quarantined, I had to keep going to work. And let me remind you that I am a housekeeper, and I had to keep going to work to iron boxers and bed sheets and clean toilets and whatever. But I'm so thankful that I still had a job. And I was so thankful that I could leave my house and I could see, my coworkers that, like I love 95% of them. That I get along with them, and it was nice being in it together and not having to suffer at home alone. And my boyfriend as well, he was still going to work too. And I won't say what specific company, but he deals with a gun company. Not exactly an essential kind of company, but he was still going to work. So it still felt like normal. And being in grocery stores or being one of the very few people outside my house, it would seem normal. And then you're just like, we are all wearing masks. I mean, we're still doing that, but and I still have those moments of like out of body experiences that this is the new normal. This is weird. And just this whole year, so many, like, I love hosting people. I love having parties. I love socializing. And not being able, and I felt that again recently because I've been fortunate that I've maintained a certain small social bubble. Abby, Courtney, my boyfriend, Avia on occasions, the shlicha for New Hampshire, and that's it. And then like the people I work with. And not last weekend, or was it the weekend before that you were gone? And Michael was gone out of town. So I and Courtney needed alone space. So I was by myself. And I'm such an extrovert that I was just like, well, what am I supposed to do at home I can't go out. I can't like call up one of my friends, be like, hey, let's hang out. I can't. Like, I'm trying to keep my bubble small so that I can keep seeing Courtney, who's immunocompromised. And I'm just like, I'm feeling COVID again. This is like so uncomfortable. Yeah. And I just hate it. I hate not being able to go hug all of my friends. So Abby just has to deal with all of the hugs.
And as somebody whose primary love language is touch, it's like, oh no, I have to get hugged extra. How am I gonna handle this?
Yeah. So it's tough.
Yeah.
So quickly, so there are the 5 stages of grief. Please chime in. We're not professionals. So you have denial, denying that it happened. Like,
yeah, you're in shock.
Yeah, like,
yes, shock.
Like, is this real life?
Yeah. I mean, I remember actually talking about, pets dying. When my guinea pig died, I was so my little Annabelle, my little pig. When she died, I was so in this like mental denial that when we buried her and we put a rock over the both over the box itself and a rock over where we buried it because we didn't want anything to dig it out. I remember thinking to myself, well, we can't do that because how is she going to be able to get out if we put rocks? So and it wasn't even I was not deliberately trying to do that. I just had this feeling in my chest of like, we can't be putting a rock over her box because how is she going to get out? I was in full on denial because of it.
And when my dad died, my denial mode, and I was in denial for years because it had been maybe 4, maybe 5 months prior that I had just moved from Texas to Massachusetts with my ex-husband. Well, he was my fiance at the time. And I had just started my first semester at UMass Boston. And it was a freak accident. So it wasn't like I had been expecting this or anything. And after that, I was working full time, going to school full time. So I was literally like, this didn't happen. I'm just going to keep working and just ignore it and put that deep, deep, deep down like a real healthy person and just ignore it.
Right? Repression always works so well, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness.
And then like a year later, you're wondering, why am I just crying at commercials?
Right.
Why am I just randomly crying all the time? It's because you never grieved, you dumb bitch.
Right. You threw everything into the subconscious, and we all know how well the subconscious handles your shit.
And then you have anger. I think about my ex-boyfriend who I was with for 4 years, and I still get angry about it. Just I don't think when we broke up, I was very calm about it, and then I was just angry. Angry that it didn't end sooner, angry that I stood in it for so long, just mad at myself for just dealing with it.
And fittingly, because I was thinking about like where has anger been for me, and I thought of a heartbreak, actually, going into the same category of grief, of loss of a relationship or relationship-based grief. I remember being really angry about one relationship where I wasn't even angry at the guy or anything he did, but just angry at the timing of it all, angry that this connection was being squandered, that, we had something so good and it just got like that gone. Rocket ship blew up, if you will. And I just felt that anger, and that I knew it was like, okay, I'm in the grieving process, and right now I'm just angry at all the things that could have been.
Then we have bargaining, which I believe is when you're like, I could have done this wouldn't have happened. I know I thought about that. The last phone call I had with my dad was asking him if any way he could help me pay for college. Like, I'm trying to get a loan. And they said, I'll see what I can do. I'll go to the bank. And that was our last phone call.
I know for me, so I had to deal with a suicide of a mentor when I was 16. And even though this was somebody who, had only really been in the periphery of my life, I'd only seen him in these school settings. I didn't know him in my personal life. There was this feeling of, if I had known, if I could have done X, Y, and Z. And then of course you can do that bargaining with God where you're just like praying that especially like my career, I was definitely doing the please let this not be whatever I have to do, God, let's not have this happen. And I've done that with relationships as well, powers that be, whatever I need to do, I will, so we can right this wrong, let's do it.
And then we have depression, which for me, like with my father, it took me forever to go through all of the stages that I needed to go through. And I still feel like I'm going through those. And yeah, it took a while for me to finally hit depression.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of synced up with going through divorce at the same time.
Ooh, all the grief.
Yeah. So it was just like using my therapist for all she's worth.
Hey, there you go. So yeah, we can, I'm trying to think of, it's so interesting when I think about, like, for me, the depression side is always this full force of emotions. Like, I very rarely actually feel it as a depression. It is really just, I am crying my eyes out so much that I don't eat. I am barely able to sleep. It's a very active depression, if you will, but it's still like that is that phase. It's just the, oh my God, here's all the sad.
I went quickly through my to depression stage after Jared had passed away. Because again, it was all just very sudden. I've talked about it before in the past on the podcast that he was in the hospital in and out for like 2 months. We only dated for a little over 3 months, which seems short-lived, but it was a fast and furious kind of relationship. We were in love. Like, I know some people are, but we fell in love like that.
And I'm one of those people that, like, if the connection's there, the connection's there. I'm never a fan of like, well, no, we gotta wait like a couple years so we get to know each other. Like, sometimes you just fucking know.
And for me, I don't waste any time getting to know someone that I'm dating. It's like, I want kids. I want this. This is what I want out of a relationship. So like, we're adults now. I'm just putting all out there. And if you're not on board for this, get off the fucking train.
There you go.
And he was all on board. And when they had a memorial, people who I'd never met before, they would walk up to me and they were treating me like a widow. And they said how he told all of them he was going to marry me and like all of this stuff. And it just like hit even harder because it was just super passionate. And that depression hit pretty hard because I feel like I was still dealing with the death of my father, who, let's see, it's 2020 and he died in 2008. So it's been a long time, but it's still like, and Jared, let's see, I've been with Michael for 7
something like
years. Yes. And Jared passed away 7 years ago. So I was still grieving my father. Like when I was grieving Jared, I was grieving my dad as well. But it was still like, because I had already went through the process, it kind of helped me kind of know what I needed to go through. And it was like, I was finally having the chance to go through all my grief stages with my dad. But we'll go into a little bit after this really quick. We need to speed through this. That when I hit depression, I couldn't get out of it. And I knew that my brain was chemically imbalanced and there was nothing I could do to get me out of this without a little serotonin help. And then acceptance, accepting.
So for me, I know that I have hit acceptance when I start saying things like, I need to make my peace with it. Now, whether or not I do make my peace with it is a whole other story, and kind of it's kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but like, even if you land on acceptance, it doesn't mean you're going to stay on acceptance. Like this is a cyclical, you're going to go nonlinear, blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but if the second I can start saying I need to make my peace with it, that's when I know I've hit acceptance.
Yeah. So there are our 5 stages of grief.
Yeah. And again, just touching on a little quickly, as I mentioned, it can be nonlinear. Maybe you jump into anger right off the bat. You are so fucking pissed off that car accident happened and it took your friend. You want the person who caused the car accident to, go to jail for the rest of their lives and burn in hell, and so on and so forth. Or maybe you go straight into depression. You are just, you're in your bed all day. And again, you can cycle through. You can hit, bargaining and then slide back. And, I guess that's at least, especially when I would go to various group therapies and recovery meetings, there was a lot of talk of like, hey, this is not a chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 type of situation. Like, this, it's way more complicated than that.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. And I would even add too, I feel like you can be in more than one of them at once. Like,
Oh, most definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Feeling all the feelings.
Yeah.
Exactly. And again, like,
Kill two birds with one stone, if you will.
oh, and then grieve the bird.
I feel like I don't remember what, I think it was Frasier that they did an episode on the 5 stages of grief. If you're a nerd, watch that. But I feel like there's another show that someone's like, I need to get through all these stages of grief, and they're like, cool, I checked off that box, and it's not always going to be like that. All right, so support systems and asking for accepting help. I could not have got through the death of my father or the death of Jared if it wasn't for friends. Yes, my mother, as soon as I can't remember because it was all a blur, if I called or my friends called her, and she was in Texas, she got her friend hooked her up with a ticket, and she flew out, and she was there that night and stayed with me for a week. But also my friends, just having them there, just I think I can't talk. Something I will pat myself on the back is I'm not afraid to ask for help sometimes and to accept help from friends. Unless it's needing someone to lift something heavy, I will not ask for help with that. Emotional help, yes, I will.
And it's interesting because I find myself kind of in the opposite boat where I'm a lone wolf person, and there's a whole deep dive in psychologically as to why I tend to become very lone wolf when I feel upset or sad.
I think it's because you're an introvert.
There's a little bit of that. It also dives into actually also my upbringing.
True.
If you grow up where your parents will not be able to comfort you in times of strife, and in fact are usually the cause of strife, you learn to turn inwards. You learn to take care of yourself. And as a result, a great example was even just this week, I really just, people would be checking in with me, and I'd be like, I really don't want to talk about it. I just want to, play Animal Crossing and cry like a baby. But I want to mention, because one of the things I did when my father died that really helped in terms of support, and it seems a little unorthodox for some people, especially those who've never had an addicted parent, where my father was a pretty severe alcoholic. I went to Al-Anon meetings after my father's death. Which for some people, if you don't know what Al-Anon is, it is for family members, loved ones, anyone who is closely associated with someone who's addicted, usually addicted to alcohol. And there's maybe a little irony there where it's well, the addict is out of my life. I don't need to be at these meetings to learn how to deal with them. They're 6 feet under. But I found that it was really helpful to be there. It was really helpful to learn why I was the person that I was, the commonalities between people who'd grow up with an addict, and even just to be able to say to a group the addict in my life actually died. It just really helped, and I had that support system that was needed. And it's not the usual way, but it really helped me out.
I had 2 different ways. So when my dad died, I smoked a lot of weed. That was how I coped. And maybe it wasn't healthy, but it really did help me keep calm. And for a week or so, anytime I wasn't working or at school, I was at my best friend's house. And it was pretty much like a passing of me between my husband, or my ex-husband, when he was my fiance at the time, and my best friend, because I did not want to be alone, and I knew I shouldn't be alone. I needed to surround myself with people, and it was a safe space, and I would just smoke some weed and watch some happy stuff. And I was like, this is how I'm coping. And then just ignoring it. Then we went into some unhealthy tendencies. Now when my late boyfriend Jared had passed away, I knew immediately, and I hadn't officially converted to Judaism yet, but I'd been practicing for years, and I knew that I wanted to sit Shiva. And so getting emotional. Uh, I love my old roommates and best friends that they were just so I told them what I wanted and they obliged. They covered all the mirrors for me. I didn't bathe. I didn't wear makeup. I lived in this sweatshirt of Jared's. And at the end of the week, they're like, maybe we take a shower now. Do you want to go to a movie? And they let me just watch Disney movies like all week. Like that's one thing I was like, I need technology. I need to watch movies. This is what's going to make me happy. And even my mother, like, obliged, and my therapist at the time, she was allergic to cats. And I called her and let her know what happened. And she was Jewish. I had specifically picked her as a therapist because I wanted that in a therapist. And she came, and we sat on my porch, and it was just so wonderful. Like the fact that she was willing to do that and be there for me. So sitting Shiva really was the way for me, and talking to my therapist and realizing that, again, I knew that I was going to need an SSRI. And it hit me really hard because it was so sudden. And I also knew I would have like crying attacks, like not anxiety like panic attacks. It was like a crying, like I would just be driving and then just like uncontrollably sobbing. And so I got some Ativan for that, which I didn't want to have to take unless I had to. And yeah, it was just learning a lot about myself and what I needed, and to be okay with that. And I think that was actually the very first time that I had got on an SSRI. And just learning that it was okay to take medication and it didn't make me any less of a person. And it was just like, my brain was like, you're on empty. I got nothing for you. So good luck, unless you're going to bring anything to the table. So yeah, for me, it was like, anytime I talk about it to friends or like new acquaintances and talk about the death of Jared, they're just like, oh my God, are you okay? And the fact that I can usually talk about it so calm, and I'm like, hey, drugs and therapy, legal drugs and therapy, like really helped me. Like, if it wasn't for therapy, grief counseling, and, taking medication for the amount of time I needed it, like, I don't know. And having my friends, I don't know where I would have been. And it's made me stronger. And it's made me be able to deal with loss and deal with grief like a lot better, and to help others when they're going through stuff, and just to share, my story and how I've gone through things.
That's true. I feel like when you go through it, then if it happens again, hopefully you know better how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. It's definitely like, so just kind of like hopping around on stuff that I had. So one thing for grieving my father, it was before Jared, that very unconventional, but if you're in the woohoo, whatever, even if you don't, whatever. So one thing that I did that gave me, and I can't remember if I was seeing a therapist yet, I went to a medium. And I think whether it was a good medium or not, I feel like it did make me embrace the grief and the loss and the thought of my father, and having lost him. I cried so goddamn much. It was just, my whole body was grieving the years and years of avoiding the grief and the realization of the loss of my my daddy, like even now it's been what, 10, 12 years since my dad died, and still fucking hits you. So the grieving is
Kind of makes
never
me
over.
think, yeah, that's what I was thinking about too. This acceptance thing. I feel like, I don't know. I think it's hard to know what is that until you go through it. But I feel like the best way I've heard it put is sort of being ready to figure out how to go on with your life with this loss. Like that doesn't go away, but how do you figure out then how you're moving forward? But it
Yeah,
goes with you.
yeah, like it just hits in the most random of places in my life. Like one time I was at work and the Mr. The gentleman I work for, he reminds me so much of my father, in all the good and bad ways. And I forgot what he was doing. He was just being silly or something. And I said out loud or to a coworker, I was like, God, he reminds me so much of my father. And then, it hit me and felt that loss. I can't do father-daughter dances at weddings. I will walk out of the room. I'm like, not doing it. Not doing it. No, thank you. Did not sign up for that. My mascara running is for happy thoughts only. Anything else you would like to chime in? We love to hear your
I'm thinking about
suggestions.
too, yeah, I'm thinking about, I think another important thing, I don't know if this is on your list, but I feel like people grieve differently too. I think
Oh,
you
yeah.
kind of started to talk about that too, like how each of you had sort of like the
Mhm.
extrovert introvert thing, that's a part of it. And then I like for myself, I started thinking about when my bubby died. That was really awful. But I still went to work because
Yeah.
I found it helpful to kind of keep doing some things, and then definitely took time off to like be with family and the funeral and things like that. But which I was very grateful that I got to do that. That's like a whole other thing. Like, how does our society help support people grieving? That could be a whole other topic. But um, but yeah, I found it really helpful. And luckily, since I'm a psychologist, I was with a bunch of therapists at work, so that was really nice.
Perks of the trade.
So like they totally got it, and I kind of changed my schedule around, moved some clients and stuff because I wasn't totally there for that, but I could do paperwork and stuff, and then like randomly every hour I could burst out crying or whatever, and kind of go back and forth between that and working. Yeah, so that for me that really helps. Some people just need to like can't do any of that.
Mhm.
Yeah, like need a break from all of that to really just focus on grieving. That's just some examples. And I think too, I feel like this comes up for me a lot working with families, because family members will grieve differently, and then
Mhm.
there will be conflict around that or confusion or things like that. And I think just something that's so helpful is to remember and know that everybody grieves differently, and that's okay. There's no
Yeah.
shame in that. And if we all can just accept how we grieve and support each other in how we grieve, I think
Yeah,
that's really
like
important.
I know that some people when um they grieve, like for example, my ex-husband, who is beloved by me. I love him very much. He's like a brother now. I know that's weird for some people to hear, but we've known each other since high school, so like we were kids and whatever. He is British. I think that uh is definitely important to note. So he had a hard time. I don't even want to say have a hard time to express emotions, but he definitely handled loss and grief in a much more British way, different way. But it was, you know, his way of like dealing with that, even though it might seem to other people like disturbing. But some people, like, not to like put Isaac on blast, but you said he's not one for crying or
He jokingly says he goes into full autism mode, and I say that as my husband is on the spectrum. I think I've mentioned that a time or two. So he will become very pragmatic and pragmatic to a fault, and it's kind of just a world like for him. He can't. There's no processing the emotions on the surface. It's a non-starter for him. It's not going to happen. So to basically slide into like, no, I'm just going to get a lot of stuff done. I'm going to be helping out pragmatically. I'm going to lay the groundwork. And I was actually thinking about like all the different ways that people can grieve. I was thinking about how, and this gets into more of a nuanced situation where people can grieve differently, but we also have to make sure you're not causing more harm with your grieving process. Because when my father died, and my father died a little over 5 years ago, one of my sisters decided that she needed to pick a fight with me, essentially. And this was happening ongoing as my father was dying. She wanted to vilify me because I wasn't around enough. And it just really got nasty. There was even to a point where her friends were online bullying me, which was really messed up because my sister's old enough to be my mom. So her friends who are old enough to be my mom are online bullying.
You're
And
lucky I didn't know about it because I was gone. I would have gone and kicked their fucking ass.
Honestly, like looking back on it, I wish I had sent some pit bulls after her because, or metaphorical, not literal, because also pit bulls are adorable and sweet and they don't do that shit usually. But and it was really terrible, and she was even causing a little bit of I don't even say a temper tantrum, but definitely a cry for attention during the funeral itself. And I would remember getting so furious where I'm just like, it's our fucking funeral. It's not about you. And then on top of that, so
Sorry, we're
sorry.
going.
I know it's my ADD can't handle this, so I'm just gonna wait.
I was just checking we're still recording in Audacity.
It's all good, but yeah, when the screen's changing, I can't. There's no compartmentalizing. So all of that happens, and I'm just like, what the is wrong with her? Why did she have to be such a bitch? But then their mother died. So my older siblings are actually my half siblings from my dad's first marriage, and their mother passed away almost exactly a year later, completely unrelated. And I watched her pick a fight with one of my other brothers, and it was over something really tiny, like you didn't drop off the key at the right place. And instead of just being like, oh, that's annoying, it was an all out, like, I don't want you in my family, in my life anymore kind of fight. And then I watched her do that again a couple of months later, because all my family members apparently died, where my brother-in-law lost his battle with cancer. And that one was a really tough one. That was one of the few family member deaths that was like, okay, I lost someone really good. And I watched her pick another fight with a different brother over something really fucking petty. Yeah. And that's when it finally clicked. I was like, this is how she grieves. Is she gets angry and she picks fights so she can have this other thing to focus on other than.
I feel like you have to draw a line.
Well,
at,
yeah.
like, this is how they grieve, and more like this is their excuse for how they grieve.
Oh yeah, so that's that line I was talking about, where your way of grieving cannot be causing harm to other people.
Yeah.
And so on the one hand, I understood, okay, this is where it's coming from, but it doesn't mean I have to accept it. Doesn't mean I think it's healthy. Doesn't mean I'm going to put up with it. I mean, so again, everyone has these different ways of grieving, and they can look weird, and they can look like, why is this person doing X, Y, and Z? And there's a lot of them that we can just be like, you know what, that's not my cup of tea. I don't fully understand it, but I hope it's helping them. And then there are ones that are like, that's not okay. You're harming other people. You've crossed the line.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, grief can be a tough one, but
fucking bitch. Ugh.
Yeah. That whole time in my life was a shit show. And if anything, 2020, with all the like joy it has stripped from my life and all the grief that I've had to deal with and heartaches and what have you, I look back to like the 2015 into late 2016 and I'm like, well, I went through worse. Okay.
Yeah. It's I remember my old therapist. I miss her so much, but she's in Massachusetts and I'm in New Hampshire, so it's I need to find a new therapist. I recognize this because I don't know, therapy, I'm sure Erin you would agree. It doesn't matter where you are in your mental state, having a therapist is good to have. It's good to have someone unbiased in your life that's also professional at mental health to just it's like you need to have a general practitioner, PCP in your life. It doesn't mean you're always sick. It's just like if you need them, they're there. So I need to get one of those again. Anyway,
That's true. People go at like different amounts too, like depending what's going on, like once a week if there's like a lot going on, or
Yeah.
sometimes you just need maintenance and it's once a month, or
I
Yeah,
need maintenance.
yeah.
It's like an oil
Yeah.
check,
yeah.
an oil check for your brain. What was I saying?
Let's just say COVID has zapped our brains. Let's just
It
also
has.
say that.
It
Yeah.
has 100%.
Yeah. I think that's another thing too. We kind of touch upon it a little bit, but I also want to mention like world event grief. Like, I mean, the whole like we were actually just talking about this before the podcast, that the election results for 2020 have been anxiety producing, like to the point that's like, I can't handle this, I want to shut down over it. And I think we both realized that a huge reason for it is because it was reminding us too much of the grief from 2016 when we watched the election shift, and it's like, who is this person who just got elected president? What's going to happen to our country? And again, just 2020 and all the things that happened, watching the pandemic ravage America and ravage the world, but especially America, watching things, watching racial inequality happen and feel like there's nothing that can be done about it. You can feel those grief. You can go through those grief stages while watching that stuff. And some people can invalidate themselves, being like, well, no, I'm safe at home and blah, blah, blah. Like, why do I feel these feelings? It doesn't matter. You're watching this suffering happening. You're watching the society that you've lived in go upside down. That's going to cause grief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So grieving sucks, but you got to do it. You got to do the work.
Yes.
Yes.
If there's literally any takeaway from this particular podcast, I hope it is the understanding of the vital importance of actually grieving and
lean with it, rock with it.
You gotta lean into those feelings. I have really noticed the only way out is through, and every time I don't follow that, I pay for it. And I usually, my husband was actually talking about this, especially this week when I've just been dealing with everything. He says, there's the adage of you can pay for it now or you can pay for it later. But when you pay for it later, there's going to be compound interest.
Amen, sister.
And then I would just throw in there too, take care of yourself. It sounds like simple and people say it a lot, but whatever it means for you, like take care of yourself through that time too.
Yeah.
And don't be mean to yourself.
Yeah. Or don't be afraid to, I'm not going to out this person. You know who you are, but you should not be, no, I'm not targeting you, I swear.
Oh, okay.
Don't be afraid to talk about your problems with other people. Even if you don't want to, like, sometimes it's too much to go to a therapist because you're really admitting the problem. And it's hard to find a good therapist. It's literally like dating.
It is. I'm jumping in a little bit, but as someone who's been through multiple therapists and her first one was an abject failure, I don't want to say anything like I think she had more clients than she should have. And personality wise, we just didn't click. It is okay. It is okay. If your first therapist, your second therapist, your 18th therapist are just not good fits, it just means they're not good fits.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to, if you don't feel like you can confide in your friends in your deep, dark, like, feelings, you need to find some new friends. Or
Yes.
yeah, like, you need to have friends that you can get, like, deep with. And it doesn't have to be all of your friends. You can have friends that are for different things, but you need to have that one friend or two that you can feel okay saying, I'm not okay. Like, I feel like I'm having a mental breakdown, and don't feel like they're going to judge you. And if they are going to judge you, move on and find a different fucking friend and dump that asshole. You should be able to open up to your friends and talk about your shit, because that's what they're there for.
Exactly. Especially as an adult, we have such limited time. If you have friends that you have to put on a dog and pony show for and pretend like everything is fine,
ain't nobody got time for that.
Right? I ain't got no time for that. I got bronchitis.
No. And you need friends that'll call you out on your bullshit. I know Abby will call me out on mine.
As much as we are each other's enablers, we will call each other out, and she will let me know in no uncertain terms when I am sipping on the dumb bitch juice.
Yes, I will. And because, like, you know, having friends like that, it's like, you know that they have your best intentions in mind.
Exactly.
So yeah. Thank you so much, Erin, for joining us. Very helpful.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
Hopefully you feel like we imparted some good wisdom as well as yours.
Yes, that was some great going through the stages of grief.
And I feel like I went through the grief as well through
yes.
this one episode. I've cried enough for tonight.
And the humor too. I love the humor. It's a good coping skill.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. I always say humor, if we can laugh, that means we have hope. So, you know, yeah.
Yeah. And for all our YouTube listeners, I'm blonde now.
Right? Look at that.
Now I look exactly like my mother. Like, exactly.
It is actually amazing. Like, I'm friends with her mom on Facebook as well, and you just look at it's like, oh my goodness, it's
like, it's Joni Jones.
Right? It's Joni Jr.
Yeah. And my coworker calls me Joni Jr.
Oh,
it's hilarious.
I love it.
Anyway, so you can find us on Facebook. Cheers to Adulting. You can find us on Instagram.
Cheers to Adulting.
Isn't it?
Cheers to Adulting podcast.
Our Twitter, sometimes used.
Cheers number 2
Adulting. You can email us any suggestions, comments, questions. No unsolicited dick pics. Or address them to Abby.
No, please don't. I will send them to your employer. I will send them to your mom. And if you have a priest I'm sending them, I'm going to put you on blast. And I got some nasty ass Instagram DM about and it wasn't a picture, but it was like basically the verbal version of a dick pic. And it was like, I'm just going to block you.
No.
I remember like showing it to some people and being like, oh, you should respond back like this. I'm like, no, that's what they fucking want. I'm going to block them.
No. That's email us, cheers2adulting@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube, Cheers to Adulting, and see us in all our beautiful glory.
Right.
You get to see all of our funny faces.
Right.
Generally mine, because Abby doesn't make funny faces. Because she can cry and still look pretty. We're making like pouty faces and still look pretty.
I think there is proof right now that I can ugly cry.
Great. So on that note, cheers.
Cheers
to adulting.
To adulting.
Show off.
Cheers to adulting.